the position of owning a business and being able to service people and to make them happy, and then for them to pay for that is an honor. You need to take a step back. You need to pause your marketing and revisit design.
What are some of the things that you've brought from the SaaS world?
Again, it just comes down to just making sure the service is done right. I mean, I need you always, forever, and suddenly I don't need Tristan. I don't need real Tristan, right? I don't need real Tristan.
Don't ever say that.
Right?
Don't ever say that.
Seriously, no coincidence. Just because, we own Spring Studio, I literally would say this, even if we didn't own it, if we owned a furniture business, my regret at this point would have been to start off with design for the actual platform that I own, just because I see it happening with our clients, and I've seen what it did to Mately, which is my software. In my opinion, it's just as important as development.
Welcome back to the Spring Studio Spotlight Podcast. Mony, what's up, man? Good to see you.
Always good to be here. I think last time we did this, I was in Bulgaria, but now that I'm back in the States, it's a lot easier to schedule this.
A little bit easier.
Yeah. Good to be back.
I figured this episode we could chat about your experience as a SaaS founder. That's how you and I met years and years and years ago. And I think our audience might get some valuable insights from your experience starting and growing a SaaS company and making the transition to Spring Studio, but like what you learned along the way. Can you maybe touch on a couple key lessons that you've learned starting and running Mately? And if possible, how you've brought some of those lessons into Spring Studio?
I mean, the immediate thing that sticks in my head, and it's a reoccurring thought, so this question didn't bring it up necessarily for the first time, is cutting corners. So cutting corners, not in a bad way, but in a budget oriented way, right? Like, well, you don't have a product, you have a budget. Design's pretty important, but at that stage, maybe you don't really know how important it is. And so since you don't have a product, we better just use the budget to hire developers. And then you start off just developing without really putting an effort and understanding what you're going to be building from a design perspective, visually. That user research just doesn't get done. And I think what potentially ends up happening in a lot of cases, and what kind of happened in my case, is later on you realize the mistakes you made, and it would have been way worthwhile and better off for you to actually spend the money, do it right, so that when you do get to something complex and you haven't thought about all the user flows and you haven't thought about the UX, now you're forced to crawl back everything else that is essentially a void. And I think about that every day, because I would have done it in a second if I can rewind time right now.
It sounds like cutting corners, you would include not focusing on or not investing in design earlier. You would look at that as some common corner that some SaaS companies cut.
100%. I there's no doubt. And I think anyone that doesn't, I'm not talking about necessarily startups that are VC funded with enough money to do everything from the start, just generally, especially around bootstrapping a SaaS company, or companies or startups that don't have the VC money that some others have. Generally, you're on a budget and you're trying to stretch it out. And generally, in everyone's mind at that point, in my mind including as well, the most important thing was product. And I went after that. Obviously, you and I connected, and we stayed friends, and we started Spring Studio. So my path was a little different. I still attempted to start with design, but ultimately what we should have done is somehow kept paying you to continue building it out and adding more flows and more details to the design. But we thought, you know what, that's enough. We want to focus the rest of it on development. What we got out of that is a huge lesson learned. And I think about that every day. And it's seriously no coincidence, just because, we own Spring Studio. I literally would say this, even if we didn't own it, if we owned a furniture business, my regret at this point would have been to start off with design for the actual platform that I own, just because I see it happening with our clients, and I've seen what it did to Mately, which is my software. It's number one. In my opinion, it's one of those just as important as development. I mean, it literally 50%.
Yeah. And I think there's a way some founders might be able to focus on design without having to hire a designer. Do you have any learnings over the course of your career that you can point to, ways that you as a non-designer might be able to get stuff done and get designs done while not being a designer. Like, are there any tips or tricks that you've learned over the years where you don't need to hire a designer, but you can focus on one or two major things and like improve the product without having to hire a designer?
Yeah, of course. I mean, just to, just to set the record straight, personally, me no, since I'm not technical nor a designer. So personally, me no. But I've found that in the gaps where we didn't have someone designing for us and didn't have someone working on the team that was a designer, and those gaps, the best thing I could do was focus on very simplistic user flows and work with the development with me acting as an interim designer, which again, not a good idea, but at least I, had the product knowledge to make sure they were fleshed out, but they had to be very minimalistic user flows that didn't involve great big designs and efforts that complexity, I guess, the complexity just can't be there. So other than that, I've found that in the case where, in my case, what happened was whatever was designed as the MVP, we had the assets, we had the components, we had all the items in the Figma file, right? And so what I was able to do at that point in time was work with the development team, but it was a grind to reuse those components and assets to build out ABC feature, that came next on top of the MVP. Now, the problem was they can use the assets and components to build out that feature, but what ended up happening is that feature wasn't thought out in relation to the rest of the features. And the feature itself wasn't fleshed out in terms of user flows. And the feature then might be disjointed because all the flows weren't fleshed out. And moreover than that, the feature itself might not interact at certain points with other modules that if it had been fleshed out, it had been thought through, those touch points would have been obviously fleshed out and designed. So components and assets being used visually, it looks the same as the software, right? It's in line with branding, but overall the flows is what I'm talking about here. You end up, with just a bunch of patches, sort of Frankensteining this whole thing together. And then at one point you're ready, right, to maybe hire a designer. That designer comes in and they're like, oh God, this is bad. We got to go back and we got to redo certain flows. That probably means adding new features because it wasn't thought through. Or even worse, you don't even hire a designer. You keep going this way until the users start speaking for themselves, right? They just start getting frustrated because they're not understanding how to use it. They didn't even know this feature was there and they needed it, so they churned. Those are all signs that you need to take a step back. You need to pause your marketing and revisit design. And at that point, in my opinion, it really sucks. So that's definitely one of my regrets.
That's so interesting. I mean, you touching on like you had enough of the visual side of things put together. You had enough of the design system figured out where you're like, we can reuse these components, we can reuse these styles to piecemeal something together. You can put these components working with the developer. All right, this is what the user needs. This is next on the roadmap. Let's put this together, this together, this together, and create a little flow. But I think a big part of UI UX design and product design in general is that UX part, which is how the whole experience works, how it all ties together. So while it's admirable to kind of work without a designer and be able to put this all together yourselves and figure it out, sometimes the littlest things will slip through the cracks and then cause problems down the line. And it adds up, it compounds. So maybe moving away from the frustrations of it, what are some of the things that you've brought from the SaaS world, whether it's mindset, scalability, automation, whatever that is, from the SaaS world? Have you brought any of that thinking or any of those things into Spring Studio, which is more of a service-based company? How do you think about that?
Again, it just comes down to just making sure the service is done right to start with, making sure that whatever we're doing, especially since this is service-based, and alternatively, I was working on a platform, right? So the platform is what the customer is interacting with. We are what customers are interacting with for Spring Studio. So just making sure that interaction is perfect from the get-go, and there's thought out processes, not necessarily in every single scenario, but there's thought out plan, I think, is what we did here. And I probably would do it again in every other scenario that I start a business in. That shifts according to what industry the business is in, right? Like at the end of the day, my point is, I guess, just not cutting corners in terms of the product, the output, or the steps it takes to get someone serviced or get a user on a platform and then have them be happy. That mentality, I guess, more of a mentality than anything else. I mean, automations, we have automations, and I'm into automating as much as possible as anyone else is, but ultimately what I think is more important is that mindset and not really cutting corners and understanding that maybe you save some money now, but you're possibly doing it so that later on you shoot yourself in both feet.
I think that also, like, if we take that a step further, what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm hearing is be obsessed with your customer, be obsessed with
Yep.
the person paying your bills. Like the person that we're serving, and in most cases are like startup founders, marketing teams, whatever that looks like, to be hyper obsessed with their experience and creating as much value at every single point as possible. I like to
Yeah.
think about it like the in-between moments really, really matter as well. It's like we have these big milestone moments where on board, like they sign up. Okay, that is a big milestone moment. But then what happens immediately after they sign up? They just dropped $3,500 on a design subscription. What happens the second they sign up? Are they just waiting? Are they just chilling, like
Sitting
doing
around.
nothing,
Yep.
sitting around? No, we made sure that they're not just sitting around. We made sure that they know, okay, the second they drop this money, like we are getting to work.
We get to
like
work.
we
Yeah.
are now on the clock. And that means beginning onboarding. That means making sure we get our kickoff call scheduled.
Kickoff calls. Yep.
Exactly. That means filling up the design dashboard with tons of design requests so we can actually get to work, make the introductions, all of those things that happen like in these in-between moments. The milestone is signing up, and then the next milestone is like receiving first designs. But like what happens in between? So like we became obsessed with that and like making sure that those moments are accounted for, and those moments are really, really delightful and nice, and like they're actually excited to continue working with us. And like, how do you make that happen besides delivering really, really great high quality designs? It's like all of these other checkpoints,
Exactly.
all of these other
Yeah.
milestones. Yeah.
You want them to feel like they're cared for, and they should feel that way. I think, I mean, for sure, every time we get a client, but in general, just in business in general, all of the time, whenever someone, for lack of a better way to say it, gives me the privilege of, taking their money for a service or a product, like it is shocking to me. Like it's absolute privilege to be able to be in a position to take someone's money for something that they want you to do, deliver on, or give them in terms of a product or a platform, and they use it. It's a privilege. Like every time that happens, I get excited, and all you want to do is just make sure that person's taken care of, served, handheld, and you want to make sure that you're there for them. And that's, I guess, the point of what you were trying to make, is those little in-betweens are there so that they don't sit around and think like, they just leave me alone. Like I just gave them the money and I'm just going to sit here and wait. No, you're not. Like I'm there. I'm immediately talking to them. There's immediately other people from the team in there. You don't ever want to let someone just hang dry for, even for, not permanently, but even for some time after they give you the privilege of giving you their money. Like that to me is at the top.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and it sounds so simple. It sounds like business 101, which it might be, but
Yeah.
it gets overlooked. It gets overlooked. It's like,
It sure does.
when somebody gives you money, make sure you're ready to fulfill your end of the bargain. Like, and get started. Like, make sure that your team is ready, make sure everybody's ready to get rolling, because they're counting the seconds. They're counting the seconds after.
Oh, yep.
After
We
they
sure know that. Yep.
After they pay, they are counting the seconds between when they paid versus when they start seeing something.
Which is fair game. Like it's totally fair.
100%. I do the same
respect
thing.
that. Yep, I do the same thing. I respect it. It makes sense. I'm there to deliver, and they can count the seconds, and I'm super happy with that. Yep. There is nothing. It's just all a privilege. All of it. People not being happy is part of the game. People counting seconds is totally fair. All of this is so fair for just having, the position of owning a business and being able to service people and to make them happy, and then for them to pay for that is an honor.
Yeah, I agree. Well said. What do you think about SaaS in kind of its current state, especially with AI changing so many things? I'm not sure if you read, but Klarna Klarna announced that they are getting rid of Salesforce and Workday, I think both, because they don't need that system of record SaaS company anymore. They are doing something in-house internally, using AI to spring something up quickly. They don't need a piece of bloated software like Salesforce or Workday to help them hit their goals and their stuff. This is a huge company, a huge enterprise level company that is making this shift. You would imagine most like that we might start seeing something like this happen across smaller companies as well. But do you think? Yeah, that being said, where do you think SaaS is going, especially like the different types? Sorry, I'm gonna get the I'm gonna get the question out, but like at the top level, like system of record companies like Salesforce or Workday, where it's like you got all your
CRMs. Yep.
yeah, exactly, all the way down to like more niche products that help solve one small little pain point. Yeah, where do you see it going?
I'm not sure there's a limit, honestly. The first thing that I was going to say was AI, right? Like that's currently, talk of the market, so to speak, and probably will be for a while because it keeps evolving. And so I don't see any limit to that. And what I was thinking was instead of something like Klarna getting rid of Salesforce and Workday because they've developed their own AI solution, I was more or less thinking about just internal positions in companies being switched out for AI, some type of internal AI piece of software that gets written to replace some sort of analyst type position, some type of third party software company that is developed on the foundation of AI that is maybe made to fill in positions or a certain position. And then it gets to be used by another company that then uses that software, that third party software to replace one or two or three people. And those are smaller companies that are, more sensitive to obviously having someone on pay full time. They're probably more than likely to take that route. I mean, the bigger companies like the enterprise you just mentioned about Klarna, yeah, I'm not sure, to what extent that'll continue to propagate through the market. That's a huge resource. I was just kind of envisioning more on a smaller scale and how easily people would be replaced depending on their roles, or in reverse, the lack of hiring, right? So in the opposite case, if you have no one to replace because you're just now starting your company, you're more apt to maybe chase down AI for a lot of reasons. Whereas if you didn't have AI, maybe you would have hired somebody to help you with A, B, C, and D. That's kind of how I envision this playing out, because it's pretty easy to wrap something around an AI, call it a name, and maybe narrow down what the AI does and hyper focus it on it doing ABC task, and then call that a software and then offer it to everyone. Essentially, like what I think we were chatting about this before, but essentially just making the use of ChatGPT super easy. Because right now it takes digging, it takes correcting. It's maybe not everyone can utilize it, right? It's not like you just click and you just type and you just go. It's like it just takes a little bit of time. But if someone takes the framework of AI, wraps it around in some sort of skin, calls it a name, that's software, niches it down a little bit more, perfects the AI, you start selling it. I think we'll see also, and I think we have seen a lot of AI startups come up just because it's so easy to do at this point. It's would it take you a week, 2 weeks to reskin something, niche down the AI and launch it or release it to the public, make a website, a landing page. So I think we're going to see a lot more AI companies come up, especially as AI gets more complex and you can do even more crazy stuff. People will just keep wrapping up AIs and third part and just skins, niche them down, and then focus them on one thing and then sell them to people.
Yeah,
I think that's
micro SaaS.
Yeah, I don't know what happened with the market, but I feel like I've been seeing that a lot. And it's not like it doesn't work. Like it works. People love that stuff. People are like, oh, this tool lets me do this faster. Oh, this is a tool. This is an AI tool for this. That's, people love it. Like it's not like, it's slowing down.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely not slowing down. And it's something we touched on in the last episode was like, we don't know. We don't know what it's going to look like in 6 months.
No.
Like I've been messing around with ChatGPT 4.0 and they have a new model that they just released. It's incredibly powerful, like that product specifically, but that product is these text-based prompts and you train it, in whether you're training it on your business use case or additional context, whatever. You can train it, and you can make it be that kind of sidekick that you can workshop ideas, you can brainstorm, you can do all sorts of amazing stuff with ChatGPT. What I'm also interested in is seeing the different types of interfaces that might come down the line of ways we can interact with AI. So like right now it's very text based and voice based, and that is amazing. That is great. And I'm really interested to see like how things look in a year when, yeah, like you said, a lot of these micro SaaS companies that are getting propped up might come up and change the way we work.
Just think about it. I mean, at the end of the day, what's the goal? What's the goal of this? I mean, we can use Spring Studio as an example. The goal is for some really smart people, way smarter than me, that's for sure, to come up with a way to create AI Tristan. And I just get to talk to you like this. And I need you always, forever. And suddenly I don't need Tristan. I don't need real Tristan, right? I don't need real Tristan's, right?
Never say that.
Real Tristan's problems, real Tristan's vacation, real Tristan's bonus requirements. I don't need that. I'll just pay a lump sum fee or a monthly fee for AI Tristan, and I'll get to communicate with them just like I am with you right now. And you'll somehow just, because all this AI stuff is crazy, you'll somehow just be giving me my answers from a design perspective and also giving me the assets and creative because you'll be doing the work. Like, I think ultimately, I don't know how long that takes, but man, it sure seems like that's the direction we're going. And at that point, whenever someone figures that out, then I don't know what happens.
One of my favorite follows on Twitter and LinkedIn posted something, I think it was last week, and we're recording this end of September 2024, posted something last week about what the future looks like in like 2075 and what entrepreneurship might look like in 2075. And basically what he's suggesting is you as the founder, you as the entrepreneur are just going to be interacting with AI bots all day, every day. And that is going to be your team. And like, it's a little doomsday. I don't love it. It was an interesting read. I really enjoy our team, and I would love to like continue operating with an actual human team. But he's suggesting like in 50 years, this might look a little bit different, where you're basically saying, Matt is in charge of all my digital ads. Okay, Matt gives me a report every single morning of like how the ads are doing and like the performance of the ads, but then can also jump in and make changes based on your requests and based on what you're asking for. So you have Matt over here in charge of ads. You have Sally in charge of customer support. You have Frank in charge of design and product development. Like, you have all of these different agents that are effectively working with you and helping your team, or are your team. I don't think we're that far off from a lot of this. I think the very, very like specific minor things like, or the very specific things like redesigning your homepage or redesigning your dashboard might be a little ways out. But things like, taking the information from your ad campaign,
I was going to say analytics.
Yeah. Looking at the analytics, recognizing what's working and what's not working, and then literally just changing some things to leverage what is working and maybe allocate more over here versus over there. Like, I think that is probably coming sooner than later, and it's actually kind of a cool idea. Like, just kind of hashing it out right now, just thinking about it, like that could totally work.
The first thing that pops in my mind is, once AI gets there, and maybe it has to some extent, maybe we're just now, because anything to do with analytics and data, I feel like obviously that's the strong suit of computers and AI. A little bit less UX, a little bit less about visuals. Sure, we'll get there too. But I think once it gets to that point, and again, if I'm wrong and we're already kind of entering that space, that's fine. But once it gets to the point to where there's AI monitoring ads, making adjustments and optimizing, dude, whoever implements that and has it will be at the top until everyone else implements it. And then you're just talking crazy competition, because at this point, essentially robots are and they don't make mistakes. They don't sleep. Like, they don't stop. Like, they're just managing
micro adjustments. Yeah.
24/7, right? I can't even, that just scares me, because I don't know what that level of competition that is going to go look like. Because then how do you beat another AI tool, right? Like, I guess that's crazy to me because right now
Honestly,
I'm a marketer, you're a marketer. I don't know. We have different skills. Maybe you're good here, I'm good there, but AI,
yeah.
like how do you?
Honestly, like just thinking about the micro adjustments for ads and based on analytics, based on best practices, based on what's working, what's not. I could see Meta already developing something like this
Yeah, yeah.
to
Why
help the
not?
marketers, right?
Right.
To help the teams be like, "Hey, this is our new assistant. It is super smart and it's going to help optimize all of your ads, make suggestions here, make suggestions there, like looking at the ad copy and making recommendations on ad copy based on performance or based on best practices. Like it's common."
I see that even on some of our internal tools that we use for outreach. They have, everyone's got the AI bots and the AI help tools to help you write the text, to help you craft this message, help you generate the best background. And one thing I think of when we talk about this and like Meta introducing some AI tool that's going to help tweak the ads and be like, crazy performer and increase all of your conversion rates. One thing I think about is like, for me, when I look at that, I still don't even buy into it. Like, I'm like, I just click exit or click the X button and get that little tool helper thing out of the way. Like, I don't even interact with any of it because I still feel like it's still janky and not really there. And I feel like when we discuss this, like AI tools managing ads and crunching these crazy numbers and computations and pushing the limit, I think a full adoption at that point, like everyone's adopted it, we've all adopted it. We understand that it will outperform any human. So we've like, we've come to accept that. And so at this point, whenever something pops up, or at that point, whenever something pops up that's AI related on a tool that I use, I would immediately click it. I wouldn't even doubt it for a second. I know it's going to be better than me. I know it's going to be better than my marketer that I just hired. I don't even think about the marketer, but I'm not there yet. So I realized, as you said that, I've been interacting with a lot of tools and they all have these AI components. Haven't clicked them. I still just feel like it's not quite there, but it probably is. I just haven't clicked it and used
Yeah,
it.
it might be. I mean, anybody watching, anybody in the audience, share your thoughts. What are your favorite tools that have added an AI feature, and have you actually used the
Does
AI
it work?
features?
Yeah.
Does it work? Does it make it better? Or is it just something that they've just tacked on like every company has? And
Right.
it's almost
Right.
like AI fatigue in a way where you're like, okay,
Yes.
you're trying to disrupt my workflow using this, by adding a new AI feature, AI summarizer, whatever it is. It's like, what have you guys actually used, and has it been helpful?
I would love to hear that because for me, I realized well in our talk just now that I've never clicked on any one of those. The only one I use is ChatGPT because we, for some reason, all know it's validated. It's the real deal. It's it's the OG, and so I just go back to that. So maybe that point will come later on. I'm not entirely sure. But even when I think of AI Tristan, right? Like I feel like there's going to be so many attempts at getting AI Tristan out there, right? Just someone wrapping Chat GPT's word focused conversation, or word focused conversation in an avatar, putting some human face to it. The lips moving, it's probably going to be off in the beginning because they'll try to do it really fast, not really fast, relatively speaking, not really polish it out. Yeah, right. Yeah, have weird backgrounds and have it just give glitchy responses. And again, when that pops up, when the time comes for AI Tristan, I'm going to click the X, like, because it ain't going to be there yet. So I feel like for me, I don't know about everyone else, but for me, I just fully haven't adopted AI, everything AI, all things AI, just not quite there. I don't think.
We're still so early too. We're in the first inning. We're in the first inning of the game. Still don't know what's possible. What we have seen thus far is pretty amazing. It's pretty awesome
It
witnessing
is.
it. And like honestly, you keep mentioning ChatGPT. ChatGPT is literally my assistant, my sidekick
Yep.
that
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have
Yep.
open every day, all day. I use it every day. I don't know about other business owners, about other people in our space, but like I have seen tremendous value just by having it open and being able to use it every day. It's awesome. It's great. It's great for its job, for its use case. Like, for example, I recorded a Loom video, a 5-minute Loom video for one of our clients who was asking about how they can use ChatGPT to help them create the content of their investor deck.
Yeah.
Right? It's like kind of an
Yeah. Yeah.
abstract concept, but also like simple enough to think about it. And really, like this is a quick aside here, but like what I did was break it down into its like basic principles. So I have a 4-step process. First step is context and business info. ChatGPT needs to know what it is that you're trying to do with your deck and for whom it is for, like, and for whom you are designing for. So set the scene. What is your business and how much are you trying to raise? I also ask ChatGPT to ask me qualifying questions. So it's like, hey, ask me 10 qualifying questions to help you with this part, to help you get all the info that you need. Second step, asking it to write the outline. Based on all of that context, based on all of that information, can you please write an outline for this investor deck? Now you know how much I'm looking to raise. That now you know my target demo. Now you know what my product does. Now you know which VCs I'm going to approach, or at least like more generally, like what VCs would be appropriate for what I'm trying to do. Create the outline. Cool. We've got a 15-slide outline now. Okay, awesome. Now let's create individual slides. Let's go slide by slide, one at a time. Slide 1, title slide. Give me the headline, give me the subhead, give me a visual that you suggest I mock up. And then also, if you have time, can you give me a little script that I can read? So all of a sudden, and you just keep going down the line. You keep going through, and it takes you 15 minutes of working with ChatGPT, and now you have the outline and the content and even the script that you're going to use for your deck. Obviously, you still need to design the thing. You still need to get the thing done. But I said, like, hey, if you're struggling with the content, if you're struggling with the copy and what to include in this deck, here's how you can leverage ChatGPT to help you come up with it, help you brainstorm it. It's not going to be perfect on the first go. That's why you continuously refine. Like, hey, the outline, that's kind of weird. We should have, instead of the team slide, like we don't have a huge team yet. Let's put advisors. Like let's add an advisor slide. Okay, cool. Now it has the context. Now it knows. All right, we need to add an advisor slide. And now let's get back to the content. It's amazing.
It's a good friend. It always listens. It always does what you want it. Like it's such a good friend. As a person that sucks at generating content, like I am not good at creating content. I can present content. I can talk about stuff. I can do the whole show part of it or whatever that other 50% is called. But in terms of creating actual content, I suck at that part. I use ChatGPT for messaging, for just content creation. Anything that I've said that's scripted, that's written, came from ChatGPT. I think the last thing I did was I think I wrote out a Loom script. I don't think I used ChatGPT to create it. I think I wrote it out based on what I previously had, but I ran it through ChatGPT, and I was like, hey, I think I wanted it. I think I wanted 3 or 4 different variations with different tones, and then I narrowed down one variation and I stripped it down to what I wanted, basically taking out the things that I thought were fluff and asking it to refine some sentences. And man, I couldn't have done that without ChatGPT. I guess I could have, but I certainly wouldn't have done it in 5 minutes or whatever it was.
Yeah, it speeds things up for sure.
I can't. It's for me, content is really difficult to get out, and ChatGPT, outside of like equations and all the stuff we were talking about, I guess is a good point, is great for helping people like me that are not good at that. Proofreading, I think. Who was I talking to? Oh yeah, that's right. I was talking to another business owner who says his thing is contracts. His thing is not contracts. He does not like reading contracts. He hates contracts. First thing he does with a contract is upload it to ChatGPT and get it summarized. And he has his different ways of doing this, right? It's not that easy, especially if it's a complex contract. But he has this, let's call it a 4-step process, some sort of process that he uploads the contract on there, and he refines, sets the scene, so to speak, goes through those steps, asks ChatGPT to essentially at the end spit out a summary of the entire agreement or of the contract, and then based on that, he then goes in and asks for, okay, well, what page or, contracts can get so long and detailed. What page, section, and subsection is this point found in a contract? And then ChatGPT spits out an answer. He goes into contract and he reads it, gets his, attention, gets focused on that. Maybe he has other questions based on it. And that's how he reviews contracts. So I thought it was really cool. Because when I was talking to him, he sent me a summary, and it was a summary of this contract. And later on, we were talking. He was like, "Yeah, man, that's how I summarize contracts. I sent you a summary right out of ChatGPT." And so I initially start with summarizing them in there, and then from there I digest them. But if someone ever needs a summary from a contract, I just use my summary that I have for it from ChatGPT. And I was like, "What? That's cool."
Might as well.
That's a different use case.
That's awesome. I love that. I love it. Yeah, man. I mean, again, like these are all great use cases, and I feel like this is just like scratching the surface of what will become like normal. I think a lot of this will become normal for at least for folks like us. Like obviously other folks in other industries might be experiencing something different, but for people like us running startups, running companies, it's a great way to bounce ideas off of a robot and get them to automate some of your life. It's great.
Summarize complex things and just make your life easier. Like, you didn't have to spend 30 minutes reading a contract. We just had AI read it for you and summarize it for you.
Hopefully it got it right.
Well, no, I mean, yeah.
Hopefully the summary is right.
I think again, there's always going to be that 20%, 10% of manual work, right? You're going to have to read what it says. You can't, I can't take the Loom video script that I had to create, not read it, and then just maybe give it to someone else to read. Or so, you know what I mean? I think that one was for me specifically, but I don't think we're there, and I don't know if we maybe in the future where that 20 or 10% doesn't need manual work. I don't know when that's going to happen, but for now, I don't think there's any escaping that. It's still great though. I mean, 80% of the work is done, and I was thinking it's so advanced. I mean, we started, or we came up to this whole AI thing with this whole digitalization of everything, right? Where everything just social media this, social media that, online this, cloud that. And even before that, like I think of myself in school, right? And even yourself too. Like in school, we didn't have back in the day, back in like middle school, even high school, we didn't have social media. You weren't on your smartphone posting online or, taking TikTok videos. And that is part of everyday life at this point. Like we are in this middle phase, and forget about AI, right? Like you had no idea what AI was back then. It didn't even, I don't know if it exists. I have no idea. But just think about the crazy advancement that happened in our life, in our kind of short life, because we're, relatively young, I guess. Just the crazy advancement in the last 20 years. We went from just having blocky old phones in high school and talking to having everything digitalized, I don't know. And to now AI, where you don't have to do anything. You don't have to think, you have to think less. Just ask a robot. Like that is mind blowing. Like your parents and my parents never got to experience that. They got to experience maybe smartphones towards the end of their careers, like when iPhone was released in 2008. But for you and me, like we're right in that precipice of, we knew and existed and remembered life before everything just became digital.
Yeah.
And then we exist and know how things are as everything is digital and AI driven. Just imagine in 20 more years, dude. It is mind blowing to think about that.
I joke with Kelly all the time that I am planning to live till I'm 140.
Probably.
I joke with her all the time. She's like, "What are you talking about?" It's like we are stuck in this moment in time where we're like assuming the way our grandparents are living their life right now and maybe dealing with certain health complications and health issues is the same way we're going to live in 50 years.
That's so crazy.
And it couldn't be further from the truth. 50 years from now, we're going to be, like you said, so much further along with, hopefully, with cancer research and eliminating disease and offering solutions to all of these complex medical issues,
ailments. Yeah.
And all of a sudden it becomes possible to prolong your life even further. Obviously, there are things that we can do today, right now. Every single person can do something right now to prolong their life. And it's real easy. It's real simple. And it doesn't require AI. It's literally getting up, walking around, and lifting heavy things. like
It's
like
super simple.
exercise and eating well will prolong your life. But if something does happen, I want to know that, yeah, wow, AI found a way to cure this ailment or help solve this problem that will then lead researchers to find a solution to like curing cancer or something. Like it's coming, and I'm so damn happy to be along for the ride and be able to hopefully witness this in our lifetime.
That's what I'm saying, and I guess again, my thought is the 20 years it took to get to here. From my memory, I don't know how long it took. I wasn't part of this industry or any tech space, 20 years ago. But just as someone strumming along through life, like 20 years ago, none of this existed, and I was pretty decently into computers and tech, so I would have known, right? I would have been on social media. I would have been all over AI had had I been young now. And the fact that this didn't exist back then, and the fact that it does now, just tells me, from a reasonable perspective, as much as you'd like to think that in 20 years things should most likely going to be the same, it's probably not true. Like, that is the furthest thing from what's going to happen. Like, I feel like leaps and bounds at this point. What normally would have taken 60 years, 50 years in terms of progression in society and tech and stuff is now taking less and less time to make these leaps and bounds. It's, like what my parents experienced with their parents was probably a more steady handoff of life. In terms of, your life will be kind of similar to ours. I mean, different countries, different experiences, but I think what we'll experience will be vastly different in terms of a handoff to like the next generation. Because again, coming from a place where we had no social media, no phones in high school, like, could you imagine telling that to someone in high school now? Like, I don't even think that they can't, does not compute. 404 error pages, like, doesn't compute.
It's like, what are you talking about? It's
Yeah.
gibberish. It's gibberish.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
what do you mean no phone? Like, what does that even mean? You didn't have a phone in school? Yeah, I had a phone. It was a block Nokia phone. Like,
Totally. We played Snake on the phone.
yep,
It was
Snake.
awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, dude.
It was awesome.
I
Oh
had a
man.
Razor,
Yeah,
towards the end of high
exactly.
school.
Exactly. Exactly. And then the iPhone changed everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the
Yeah.
best.
It did.
Awesome.
So I'm excited about the future. Very
Me
excited.
too, man.
From
Me
a
too.
company
I'm a
perspective.
natural optimist
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Likewise.
Love it.
Oh, sometimes.
Love it.
Sometimes.
I'll be your optimist. Don't worry.
Appreciate it, man. Filling the gaps every now and then.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sweet, bro. This has been great. I think
This is cool.
I think that's the pod. Peace
That's
out,
it,
everybody.
man. See you next time, guys.